And in general, there are different indices that we use to measure inflation. GDP deflator is one common measure of inflation. Wholesale price index, consumer price index, producer price index, service price index. There have been different indices to measure inflation. Okay, I would explain about all of them, but whatever the index is, let's say consumer price index. In fact, index measured using consumer price index is very often referred as retail inflation. So when I say CPI based inflation for the month of Feb is 6%. For the month Feb 2025 is 6%. Okay, how do you explain this to a layman? The February 2025, the inflation rate, computed based on consumer price index. C stands for combined. Because I think as of now, the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, MOSPI, measures 3 different types of consumer price indices. CPI, rural, CPI, urban, CPI, combined. Don't worry, we're going to discuss this. But I think since this is a class of revision, I am assuming these are things that you might be already aware. So let's say, ignore all of this information, but just imagine the CPI based inflation for the month of February 25 is 6%. And this has been reported by the media because the MOSPI has informed this to the public. Because Ministry of Statistics Program Implementation is the one that takes the responsibility of computing inflation based on CPI and is bound to announce this inflation on a monthly basis with a lag of not more than a month. That means before the end of next month, in general, हमारे देश में somewhere in the second week of the next month, you will have the inflation rate announced for the previous month. So that's the reason, go back and just look at the newspaper on 13th or 14th of this month, you will be figuring out the inflation rate of February of 2025. Let's say the 14th of this month, you have come across the piece of news that the inflation rate for the month of February, right? Isn't it? I've been saying that either based on wholesale price index or consumer price index, India mein inflation is computed on a monthly basis. I mean, for every month is computed with a lag of not more than a month. That means इस महीने का inflation should be announced and announced before the end of next month. Practice is that somewhere by the end of second week, the government happens to update the paper about this information. इसी वजह से I'm asking you, just go back and look at 14th or 15th of this month का paper. You will find the MOSPI announcing the inflation computed based on CPI. My question to you is, how do you explain this to a layman? मतलब क्या है? Does that mean price of all goods and services that India may produce, whatever is being produced or whatever is being consumed in India, has gone up by 6% in February compared to the month of or compared to the month of February in 2024? How would you explain this to a layman? That's my question, sir. It simply does mean, the price of certain basket of goods and services. Not all goods and services. Only a certain basket of goods and services. In the last class, I think I might have pointed out, we are not bothered about change in price of every good in the market. Am I right? Isn't it? Are we really ever concerned about changing price of Rolls Royce? Why? That's it. Isn't it? We are least bothered about changing price of Rolls Royce, Ferrari or Maybach. Isn't it? What are we concerned about changing price of rice, edible oil, sugar, salt, isn't it? Jaggery, milk, meat, onion, tomato. A certain basket of goods and services. Roughly, approximately it's around 485 commodities and services together. So it simply does mean the price of this basket in the retail markets or the retail level has gone up by 6% in the month of February in comparison to the price of, okay, price in February 2024. So that's how every month inflation is announced before the lag of, okay, with a lag of not more than a month, and it is computed on a point to point basis. Feb 25 with Feb 24, March 25 with March 24. That's the common practice. Year on year change is what we look for. Same is the case with growth rate. We look at year on year change. Okay? Because if you just compare on a daily basis or monthly basis, you don't find a considerable increase. Am I right? If you're just trying to introspect yourself, your performance with respect to preparation of civil services, you compare your knowledge levels of today with the knowledge that you have yesterday, you don't find any change and you never feel happy. Throughout the time, isn't it? There has to be some gap when it comes to evaluating yourself, right? Same thing holds good. So we do compare, okay, with a gap of 1 year, year on year change. Am I clear now? So that's the meaning. So when I say inflation, by default it does mean a rise in price. Isn't it? So as of now, if you look at in India, who is primarily responsible in containing inflation? Huh? And do you think only RBI could contain inflation? Containing does mean keep inflation under control. Do you think RBI is the only agency that could control inflation? But who in India normally, AK, is taking the responsibility of controlling inflation? Minister of Finance or RBI? Who in India is primarily responsible to control inflation? RBI. Paka? Sure? Okay. So how could RBI control inflation? What do you think RBI could do to control inflation? Okay, so before that, let me ask you a question. How many of you heard about something called Monetary Policy Framework Review Agreement? You heard about it? Never heard about it? Monetary Policy Framework Review Agreement or Monetary Policy Framework Agreement? Yes? So this has been, okay, since 1621 it's been implemented and extended for 5 more years in 2021 April. It's an agreement between Government of India and RBI. It's an agreement between Government of India and RBI. And as per the agreement, which came into force in 16 for 5 years and extended for 5 more years in 21 April. That means it is gonna be for in implementation up to 26 April. As per this agreement, the RBI has been given a mandate. Mandate, matlab, the primary objective of RBI, because RBI being the monetary authority in India, has different objectives. It could influence the value of rupee. Do you accept it? Can RBI influence the value of rupee? Can RBI influence growth and development in the economy, employment in the economy? Yes or no? Can RBI policy or monetary policy influence the price of goods and services in the economy? Isn't it? So there are n number of things that RBI is capable of achieving. But as per this agreement, it has been explicitly mandated the RBI's primary goal or primary objective should be targeting inflation. Targeting inflation. Got it? So inflation targeting, okay, has been the primary objective. Rest of things comes later. And when I say inflation targeting, in fact, it has also been given a range. The range is, okay, the RBI has to ensure the inflation at any time in India should be within 4 plus or minus 2%. You should target inflation and you should ensure that it would be in the range of 4 plus or minus 2%. Matlab, what's the range? 2 to 6%. Right. So what if it goes beyond 6%? Who would be affected if it goes beyond 6%? Producer, consumer, government. Generally, producer, consumer. Consumer. Why? Yeah, because the rate at which prices are changing is beyond 6%. Am I right? Yes or no? Isn't it? So any rapid increase in price of goods and services hurts the consumption capacity because it results in erosion of our purchasing power of hard-earned money. Isn't it? So we ideally prefer 4%. But the government says max people could tolerate is 6%. But if it goes beyond, it's out of control. There has to be some initiatives to be taken to bring in within the range. Right? So ideally we prefer 4%. But maintain exactly 4% is near impossible. So henceforth we happen to come with giving them a range. But why would you insist it has to be 2%? Why not 0 to 6%? Huh? Why not 0 to 6%? Why do you insist it should be minimum 2%? Some inflation is good for the economy. Casey? Huh? Okay. So if it is less than 2%, who would be affected? Why? Yeah, you're right, sir. What's wrong? Okay, why? How come producer gets affected?
People won't buy because
Why would people won't buy when the prices? See, an inflation of 0%, matlab kya hai, sir? Okay, the price of good, okay, isn't it? It has not gone, it has not experienced any change from last year to this year. Why would you think people won't buy? People won't buy when the price increase. Don't you think people would prefer buying when price comes down or when price remains constant? Isn't it? Right? People might not buy if the price keeps on increasing. So why would you think a 0% rate of inflation discourages people buying it? In fact, price of goods and services not changing. You should be happy.
prices you buy today, the prices won't change.
Hmm.
Postpone the buying to something later. Not boost the economy.
But basically, the basket we are referring is not basically any luxury, isn't it? Or for investment. It's more or less the necessities. Isn't it? No, I'm okay, TK. I'm asking that gentleman the question. You said it hurts producer. Casey, what way? Let's say, yeah, it discourages, sir. Why? Why would it discourage producer? That's the answer. Let's say if I happens to, what's your name? Siddharth, if I promise you that forever I'm going to pay you the same salary, would you be happy? Huh? Why? Okay, even though prices don't change, isn't it? You still expect. Why? Because over a period of time, okay, your productivity increases. And moreover, you should have some incentive, right? Yes or no? Don't you think you should have some incentive, isn't it, to do whatever you're doing in a better manner? Isn't it? So it's as simple as since the time I happen to begin my career, if I'm getting with the same price, then I no longer would be interested in taking economy classes. Am I right? There has to be incentive. Producer ke liye, right? Yes. And that's the reason. In fact, inflation to a certain extent is necessary and it's, okay, I would say it's a necessary evil. Required. Does make sense. So, you see what I say? Should be 2 to 6%. Got it? And the other thing is, in case, because you've been given the target, this is your primary objective. In case you fail in keeping inflation in this range of 4 plus or minus 2% for 3 consecutive quarters. For 3 consecutive quarters. I mean, for 3 consecutive quarters, if inflation less than 2 or more than 6, does mean you are set to fail in containing inflation. Because I aapko ek kaam diya, isn't it? And I said, this is your primary responsibility. And how am I going to evaluate your performance? This is how. In case for 3 consecutive quarters, for a period of 9 months, if I notice that the inflation is beyond this range, then I would end up saying you failed in it. In case of failure, I would expect you to give it in writing. Okay, give it in writing, explaining the reasons for failure. So I'm just trying to make RBI more responsible for containing inflation. So you should give it in writing. And at the same time, okay, in this as part of same agreement. In fact, the agreement and okay is more or less based on the recommendation of Ujjit Patel Committee with respect to monetary policy reforms long back. Okay, the idea of MPFA, okay, is based on the recommendations of Ujjit Patel Committee. Got it? And as per the agreement, it's also made it mandatory the review of monetary policy, which is now bi-monthly. Which is now once in every 2 months, has to be now done by a monetary policy committee consisting of 6 members. So remember in the last class I said the annual monetary policy is formulated by the RBI. Okay, but once in every 2 months this policy is reviewed, if necessary revised based upon the circumstances. Right? Sometimes the economy might experience a very high rate of inflation because of too much of demand. Kabhi it might happen, it might experience a sluggish demand, lack of enough jobs, lack of enough output. Right? So what should be the timely intervention that's required is what these people are supposed to take a call. But prior to September 2016, the RBI is to formulate it. And the review also used to be taken care by the RBI governor with some experts in the RBI itself. But now, as per this, the RBI, the review of policy has to take place with a 6-member committee. That's a monetary policy committee. Got it? So that's what the agreement is all about. So Abhitona, the RBI is the one that's primarily responsible to control inflation in India. But do you think RBI alone can control inflation? RBI alone can control inflation. Is it practically possible? If you look at last year, since when are you since when you people started preparing civil service? When was? For how long you been preparing? 9 months, 6 months, 1 saal, 2 saal? For how long you been preparing this exam? Yes? Okay. So if you look at last year economic survey, who is the economic advisor of India? Sanjeev Sanyal is okay. He is one of the members of Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. Okay, he is active in social media. That's the reason you might have come across the name. But I am asking, who is the economic advisor of India? In fact, he is basically the one authors the economic survey. The one who authors the economic survey is the economic advisor of India. And who is the current economic advisor? And I am just giving a clue. Just around 20 days back, he has been given an extension. 20 days back. Shaktikant Das is a former RBI governor who has been appointed as a principal secretary to the government. Prime Minister. Who is the economic advisor of India? Iska naam kya hai? And you are referring to the gentleman who is member of Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. He is Sanjeev Sanyal is a member. But I am asking you, who is the economic advisor of India right now? RBI? Options. Okay. So, TK, why again waste my time simply giving you options? Is Professor Anant Nageshwaran. So, the reason why I'm just bringing the name of this person, in the last year economic survey, he happened to bring in a debate. The debate is, should RBI target core inflation or headline inflation? That's a debate. And I am assuming you are aware of the terms called headline and core inflation. If not, I will revise it now. Okay, so that's the debate. And in this year, he also has come with one more. That is, India requires further more deregulation. Because India still, though it has experienced liberalization somewhere in 90s, but still India is a overly regulated economy. You have too many regulators and the regulations are very stringent. And moreover, we also have a regulatory body for a regulatory bodies. Have you seen FSDC? Financial Stability Development Council. More or less, it's a regulatory agency or regulatory body of regulators in India. So we've been, one of the most regulated economy. And he said we need to further deregulate the economy if India really intends to attract more and more capital inflows and realize the dream of producing more goods and services. You see what I said? He has referred the same, and even finance minister in her budget says not only India has to look for make in India, we should also look for make for India. Make in India nahi, make for India, make for the world. Got it? But for that to happen, don't you really think the ease of doing business, India has to further improve? You accept it? Yes. So now TK, anyway, I hope at least you've been aware of, okay, this. And any doubt on it? So I just want to convey the fact that before the beginning of this session, inflation, the primary responsibility to control inflation is with the RBI. And since independence, more or less, is the RBI more or less doing this primary job. But since 16, we happen to make it an explicit mandate. Arey bhai, dekho, you are capable enough to achieve lot many things. But I want you to primarily focus on inflation targeting. Inflation targeting. Got it? And I want you to ensure that it should be within range of 4 plus or minus 2%. And I'm also evaluating, okay, I would evaluate your performance. And in case you fail, I want explanation from you. Is that clear now? Yes. So now let's go ahead and try to understand. So when I say inflation, you mean to say it's a phenomenon of rise in price. What would result in rise in price? What causes rise in price? Why do price rise? That's simple question. Why do price rise? Huh? Very good. Okay, rise in demand. So rather than demand, I would write it an aggregate demand. Sum total of demand for all goods and services. Okay, so if the demand increases in comparison to supply, am I right? Yes or no? So let's, okay, just for a comfort, I'm assuming supply constant, but the demand is rising. Yes or no? Prices rise. Isn't it? Yes. What else? Very good. Okay. The second thing, or else, let me assume the demand has not experienced much change or rising, whatever it is, but there's a drastic fall in supply. Will that have an impact on prices? Yes or no? Isn't it? That could be. And the other things you just say, okay, say is increase in cost of production. I mean, increase in cost of factors of production also results in rise in inflation. Am I right? Isn't it? So at the end of the day, more or less, if you notice the fact, either it's a rise in price, or let me ask a simple question. Again, imagine the demand, okay, is reducing, whereas supply relatively remain constant. What would be the consequence? Prices will decrease. Do you accept it? Yes, there's some supply of goods, but there's not enough demand, or the demand is coming down. People doesn't have enough purchasing power. In fact, okay, in the last 2 years, what you have noticed, dunia is experiencing a very high rate of inflation. But you would be surprised to know there's one big economy experiencing opposite. That is China. Dunia has been experiencing. Remember in the last class I said the inflation rates in North American countries, especially USA, the inflation rate West European nations, the highest in last 40 years. Itna high rate of inflation. But on the contrary, if you look at country China, it has experienced significant deflation. Can you explain the reason behind it? Because you look at China is a manufacturing hub of the world. It has itna sara production capacity that could meet the global demand. Isn't it? That could meet the global demand. But since the global economy is experiencing a very slow growth and there is not enough consumption capacity increase, isn't it? Henceforth, they are capable enough of producing itna sara quantity, but the demand for it is only of this much. Got it? So when the global market slows down, obviously the demand for goods and services, because China primarily is an export-oriented economy. Am I right? Isn't it? So if there is a very high growth in global economy, definitely that would result in increased demand for Chinese commodities, that results in increase in employment opportunities, that results in increase in income of the Chinese people, and that results in increase in more domestic demand. Isn't it? Because of more external demand. But when you happen to notice the global economy itself is experiencing severe contraction, not enough demand, what happened? The productive capacity is very high. Isn't it? And I cannot simply keep on producing the same output. Why? There is not enough global demand, right? Isn't it? So what's happened? Chinese okay, companies, they started simply reducing their output. That resulted in a massive unemployment. People doesn't have enough money, but market has enough goods and services. Maybe you might be coming across these news like ghost cities, ghost towns in China. Isn't it? So the supply is very high, but there's not enough demand. You see what I say now? You look at it in the last 2 years, China, contrary to the other part of the world, experiencing deflation. Enough goods and services. In fact, I have okay, I mean, at such a huge production capacity, I could meet the global demand. Isn't it? But not enough money with the people to buy the goods and services. And that's the reason most of the towns built there turn to become ghost cities. Because I have enough houses to accommodate almost all Chinese, but people doesn't have enough money to buy them. Nor they're interested. So what happens? As simple as that. Let me just, okay, ask a simple question. What if all these software companies, because I think maybe you might be aware of the fact that metropolitan city where the housing prices are increasing at a very rapid rate out of all metros in India is Hyderabad. Hyderabad, the price of housing in the last 2 years is been increasing at a very rapid rate. So the rentals, the housing price, everything is increasing. Okay, even in the outskirts of Hyderabad, a villa is costing you around 5 crore rupees. Isn't it? And there are certain prime locations where a villa happens to cost 36 crore rupees, which is the price of real estate in New York downtown. But let's imagine all software companies in India happens to take a call. Because housing prices increase, the employees will also expect more salaries. Yes or no? When the housing price in Bangalore, Hyderabad is increasing, obviously more or less even the real estate price would also increase. I mean to say commercial property price would also increase. Now let's assume all software companies have taken a call. In order to cut down their cost, they said, we'll let you work from home, work from remote location. Not necessary you need to come to office, because if I insist you to come to office, I need to simply come with a commercial space in the prime locality of Hyderabad. It's going to cost me huge money. And moreover, the rentals in Hyderabad is very high. People demand more money, more salary. So I say it's really increasing my cost of production or writing software code. And let's say all software companies in Bangalore and Hyderabad or in India have taken a call. Okay, we will let you work from a remote location. Will that have any impact on prices, on housing, prices of housing in Hyderabad city? What happens? Rise or fall? Fall. Why? Am I right? Yes or no? Rentals in Hyderabad and Bangalore city. Rise or fall? Huh? Fall. In fact, post-COVID, I mean the last 2 years, the rental prices in Bangalore city has gone up by 40%. Why? Because now every company is forcing their employees to come back and work in office. Got it? But if you've been given the option to work from remote location, definitely that would come down, right? Isn't it? So at the end of the day, I just want to let you understand the fact either it's a rise in price, or let's assume in this case, the demand has remained the same, but there's been a bumper harvest of food grains. So there's been an enormous rise in supply. What's the impact? Prices fall. So either it's a rise in price or fall in price. I guess you might have noticed everything is just because of mismatch in demand and supply forces. Demand supply mismatches. You accept it. So if you really intend to, because at the end of the day, if you think of stabilizing prices, what do you mean stabilizing prices? Price stability, not to keep the price constant, because it's a stupid idea to believe in constant prices. Your job ideally is to stabilize the price. What do you mean by stabilizing price? Yes, simply it does mean, let's suppose here in this case, this is a time and this is a price. So if you imagine, let's say this is an average price line. So if your price happens to move in this fashion, okay, it does make sense. And over a period of time, the average price is increasing. But still, at any time, the variability or the deviation from the mean is very less. But imagine this is how the prices vary. isn't it? That seriously discourages the production. Right? So the entire economy gets affected. Imagine you're a farmer who cultivates onions. The day you happen to sow the crop for 40 rupees. Before you harvested, it has touched up to 60. You are happy. By the time you harvested, it has come down to 4 rupees. Would you ever dare to dream to cultivate onions? No, right? Yes. So stability is what matters. Whether it's a value of rupee or value of goods and services, stability is matters. So you as the central bank governor, as the monetary authority, your job is not only to contain inflation. We're just narrowing down, but ideally the central bank and the governments together are supposed to maintain stability in prices. To ensure prices would never either steeply rise nor steeply fall. Matlab nahi hai, you should always keep the price constant. Your job is to keep prices a step. Understood? Yes. So now, okay, let's come back to inflation. Just now we have accepted the fact the price rise could be increase in demand. And it is this kind of inflation you people generally refer as demand pull inflation. A phenomena of too much money chasing too few goods and services. You accept it? This is what we call demand pull inflation. And don't you think any economy that happens to experience a high economic growth, increase in output, is bound to experience this type of inflation? Am I right? Yes or no? Any economy experiencing expansion. What do you mean by expansion? Increase in output. All right. Expansion of economic activity has been there is more economic activity, more amount of goods and services being produced. So any economy experiencing increase in output, rise in output, would experience rise in employment opportunities. You accept it? Because you cannot produce things out of thin air. You don't have a magic wand where you could simply say, okay, isn't it? Wave it and you have extra output. Right? And what does this imply? Increase in employment imply increase in income. Isn't it? And increase in income would result in increase in aggregate demand. When consumption increases, right? Isn't it? And that increasing demand itself incentives people to produce more output, right? Isn't it? In fact, this is generally what people refer as a virtuous cycle. Isn't it? On the contrary, an economy experiencing contraction, matlab iska output is falling. It does mean unemployment rising. It does mean income with the people, isn't it? They can spend, happens to come down. And does mean that demand comes down. And when there's not enough demand, okay, isn't it? Producers do end up cutting down their production. Like in the last 2 years, you might be coming across this news. Cognizant has fired 2,000, TCS fired 500, Infosys have fired 2,000, Google has fired. Not only small companies, isn't it? Every big multinational company in software has been firing thousands of employees in the last 2 years, isn't it? Not small companies. Isn't it? Even multinational giants like Meta, Google. Why? What's the reason behind it? Yes. Why? Why are these software companies firing so many employees? Huh? Pardon? Demand is falling. For what is okay? AI. And you blame AI for all this loss of jobs. Cutting us. Why are they cutting our costs? That's my question. Why are they cutting costs? Simple. See, the thing is that the global economy itself, okay, हर एक problem के लिए मैंने आपको solution दिया last class में. The global economy experiences sluggish growth. There is no enough economic activity taking place, and it's not increasing. Literally, there is a stagnation. Isn't it? So when there is no rising demand, when there is no increase in, okay, isn't it, demand for my services I provide, isn't it? There's no point in keeping thousands of employees on payroll. Isn't it? So henceforth, I'm just trying to cut down my costs. Because there is no enough demand for the services I provide. I'm just cutting down my costs. That's it. Simple. So you see, just imagine if the same thing happens in every sector of the economy, don't you think this is obvious to happen? Isn't it? Got it? That results in falling income. Falling income results in falling demand. And no enough demand, why would you really keep the same output production. You reduce it. And this is what, I guess, you would be referring this as a vicious cycle. Isn't it? So this seems to be a very rosy, colorful picture. But have you noticed when the demand keeps on rising, it's not necessary the supply always matches with the demand. Am I right? With too much money chasing too few goods, like housing in Hyderabad city. Your income levels are increasing. And look at software engineers, they are just getting paid in a 5-digit salary per month. Itna sara paisa kama rahe to, isn't it? People obviously their affordability, consumption capacity increases. And that's the reason, since more people in Hyderabad could afford to spend crores of rupees of money only on housing, the demand is increasing. And there's not enough supply in the market. And everyone who has good money would always like to buy a property in a prime location. Am I right? Yes or no? Working in Hyderabad, why do you like to simply buy a property somewhere in, name some foreign location from Hyderabad? Hyderabad. Okay. Got it. I don't really think so. If you are working in Hyderabad, settling in Hyderabad, would like to settle in Hyderabad, always you would prefer buying it in a prime location. Somewhere in Banjara Hills, Madhapur, Gachibowli. Isn't it? You guys getting it? But the supply is limited. What happens? Prices rise. So anytime when the people income increases, their spending increases, and increase in spending capacity results in increase in demand, isn't it? And that demand, if it's more than the supply, prices obviously tend to rise. Look at the price you're paying for kilo rice. Year on year, the amount of food grain that India is producing is increasing. Do you know that fact? Last year, India has produced 329 million tons of food grains. And in the next financial year, India has a target of 333 million tons of food grains. So year on year, the food grain production is increasing. You will also notice the fact the price of even food grains is also rising. Because supply is increasing, even their demand, prices are also increasing. Right? So what do you think is the price of 1 kilo rice when your parents are of your age? Is the same 60, 80? How much it's, if good quality of rice as of now in market would cost somewhere around 80 bucks, right? Is that the price when your parents are of your age? Is this 60 gonna be the price when your kids you gonna be of your age? Why? Why does it change? Look at it. In India, it's not decreasing. Isn't it? Don't you really think the amount of food grains Indians used to cultivate when your parents of your age, when parents of your age has been some 20 years back? Yes or no? 20 or 25 years back, your parents are of your age. 25 years back, the amount of food grains Indians cultivating less. Now the amount of food grain we are cultivating has enormously increased. And the prices are also increasing. And in future, it would further rise. It's no. Why? Population is also increasing. Isn't it? The demand is increasing. Isn't it? Population is increasing. Isn't it? And not only population, in fact, even the spending capacity of people is also increasing. Isn't it? If you just look at it, some 25 years back, a good number of people in rural Telangana used to consume jowar as their staple food, staple diet, jowar roti. Abundantly available every, in the countryside, rural. Am I right? Isn't it? Rice rarely used to be. One, typically, you people doesn't have enough irrigation facilities. Paddy is a water-intensive crop. So that being the reason, what is abundantly cultivated is the coarse cereals, jowar. That obviously has been your staple food. Same is the case, rural part of Rayalaseema and some part of Karnataka, South Karnataka, you notice people consuming a ragi staple food. But now everyone prefers. So this diet has been replaced with the polished rice. Not that the cultivation pattern had changed, cropping pattern had changed, the spending capacity of people also has improved drastically. So of course supply is increasing, but the increase in demand is at much faster pace than supply. Am I right? And this phenomenon is going to persist for a certain period of time. You accept it? You go follow what I mean to say? So just because, okay, increase in demand might incentivize producers to produce more output. But if the demand is growing at much faster pace than the supply, then what's the consequence? Prices rise. Same thing goes good. You have certain output, but people doesn't have enough money to spend, and if the demand keeps on coming down, isn't it? What would happen? Prices fall. So not that an economic experiencing contraction would experience only problem of unemployment, it might also experience a problem of deflation. Similarly, any economy experiencing a decent economic growth is by default obvious, isn't it, to experience inflation. Am I right? Do you accept it? But as such, inflation is not really bad, but a very high rate of inflation is really bad. Isn't it? So that being the reason, just because the title of the topic is inflation doesn't mean the state has only one concern, that is to control the rising prices. Ideally, the state's responsibility is to keep the price stable. So inflation has been phenomenon of rise in price. Deflation has been phenomenon of fall in price. And deflation can also be called as a negative inflation. Deflation also referred as a negative inflation. Am I clear now? Yes. So now coming to the case, I have given you two different instances. Like she said, okay, inflation could be because of rise in demand, demand inflation. It could be a fall in supply or increase in cost of production. That's what we call cost push inflation. Isn't it? I mean, the reason why people end up paying more prices could be n reasons. One, primarily rise in demand. The other is primarily because of increase in cost of production or lack of enough supply. Like remember in the last class, I was saying that the reason why the inflation rates across the world has been increasing in the last 2 years is very high because of the supply shock due to Russia-Ukraine conflict. Because these nations are one of the world's largest suppliers of raw materials, commodities. Isn't it? Not only the industrial raw materials, even the agricultural produce like wheat. And this prolonged war between these two nations has resulted in a severe shortage of raw materials, which resulted in increase in cost of production of goods and services. Am I right? So the economy, isn't it, in the last 2-3 years been experiencing a cost push inflation, supply shock inflation. You accept it? Understood? So sometimes it's because of very high demand, sometimes it's because of a lack of enough supply, which results in increase in cost of production. So that could be the other reason. Take the case of India. You know, in India, the Russia-Ukraine conflict has resulted in rise in price of certain commodities, no doubt, because we are not immune to any external event, right? But at the same time, if you look at the inflation in India primarily, okay, is due to enormous rise in prices of a certain basket of goods, that is food. And within food, the primary reason behind very high rate of inflation in the last 2 years is increase in price of perishables. I guess you understand what's a perishables, right? What are perishables? Okay. And within this, the primary contributor to phenomenal rise in price in the last 2 years is onion and tomato, the major villains. Okay, so the reason onion tomato rise in price itself would result in a high inflation, because remember I said when I say inflation, CPI based inflation, it basically CPI, what does CPI stand for? Consumer price index. What do you mean by index? What's an index is? Let's say if the index, let's suppose the index, I'm just giving a random number, index value 250 and the index number has gone up to 255. What does it indicate? The index number for last month is isn't it 250? And the index number is now 255. Index, because index you might have seen it's a number at the end of the day, right? It's Sensex, sensitivity index, it's an index. Nifty, National 50, it's an index. Index of industrial production, consumer price index, wholesale price index, purchasing managers data index, service price index. An index basically is nothing but an indicator. An index is simply an indicator. What is the meaning of the word rise in index from 250 to 255? What does it signify? Increase. Increase in whatever the index corresponds to. Am I right? If it's an index of industrial production, rise in index number indicate rise in output. If it is a price index, rise in index indicate rise in price. That's it. An index is simply an indicator. Okay. Right. So now, as I said, when it comes to consumer price index, I am concerned about the change in price of certain basket of goods and services. What is a simple thing I could do? I could simply look at the price of each of the commodity, average it. Next month, I would do the same thing and again average it. Right? Yes or no? Let's say I am only considering price of potato, onion, tomato, rice, and then edible oil. Let's imagine this is the only basket I am concerned. Potato, onion, tomato, rice, and oil. So I'll just take the price of this commodity and I'll just simply do the average. Next month, I will do the same thing. If the average value for the next month increases, what does it indicate? What does it indicate? I'll take the price of all 5 commodities this month. Next month, I will do the same thing. And I would simply, what am I doing? I'm just doing the average. Because I'm not worried about changing the price of each and every one. I'm just concerned about changing overall basket. Isn't it? It's as simple as if I'm really concerned about the performance of overall class. The best thing I should look at is your average marks. Same is the case. Since I'm concerned about changing price of the basket of goods, rather than looking at the change in price of each and every good, I'm just looking at the average. See, if the average increases for the next month, what does it mean? The price of this basket has gone up, isn't it? So a simple average is an indicator. But thing is that people, let's suppose imagine the rice price has increased by 10%. 100 rupee rice has gone up to 110. And let's put some salt in this commodity. Salt also has experienced rise in price by 10%. So last month to this month, there's an increase in price by rice by 10%. Salt also has experienced a rise in price by 10%. That's rupee ka kilo has gone up to 11 rupee. 100 rupee rice has gone up to 110 rupees. So both has experienced an equal proportion of rise in price. But does that bother you equally? I mean, what bothers you more? Rise in price of salt by 10%, rise in price of rice by 10%. Why? Why? Simple. Isn't it? So compared to salt, the amount of rice we consume is more. By that logic, compared to the money we spent on salt, the amount of money we spent on rice is more. What results in increase in your cost of living is mostly increase in price of these commodities that we consume on a large scale, because that's where we spend a lot of our money. Isn't it? Yes or no? But a simple average might not convey this fact. Yes or no? इसी वजह से ना generally the most commonly used index is a weighted average. Weighted average. Since we know this really would happen to have more impact on our consumption capacity, because we spend a lot of money on it, because we consume large amount of rice compared to the amount of salt. Am I right? And how would you ensure the index number would reflect this change? Isn't it? We assign more weightage to it. We assign more weightage. So an index, generally the most commonly used index number is a weighted average. Got it? So each and every commodity, based on the money we spend, based upon the amount we consume, we assign a weightage. The 10% increase because of high weightage would be magnified. And that helps in understanding by what rate our cost of living is changing. Got it? So an index majorly or most commonly used is a weighted average. I think you understand, right? Average, weighted average, right? Yes. It could be a geometric average, geometric mean, or arithmetic mean, but it's a weighted average. Am I clear now? So iska matlab hai, when I say consumer price index, and as already said, it's an index that tracks the change in price of a certain basket of goods and services, which obviously is a weighted average. And within this CPA, 45% weightage is given to food. 45% weightage in that CPI basket is given to food. Clear? इसका मतलब है any change in price of food grains would result in an enormous rise in the index number. Am I right? Because इसका weightage ज़्यादा है. But you know, within this CPI basket, अभी तो Indian government also happens to track the change in price of pan masala and tobacco and intoxicants. Even they have been gained weightage of around 4%. So look at Indian government generous enough to bother about tracking change in price of pan masala, tobacco and intoxicants. Even they have been part and parcel of it. But but we don't simply, isn't it, right? What part of your money is spent on pan masala, tobacco, or any other intoxicants? Very less amount of, ideally, isn't it? But an increase in price of this would result in an enormous rise in cost of living. Am I right? And that greatly reduces purchasing power. इसी वजह से I will just give a more weightage to it. So that means compared to any other basket of goods and services, if price of food grains rise, that has mean the index value is going to rise by a significant. Am I clear now? So an index is a weighted average, the most commonly used index. The one that has more weightage and any change happens with respect to it, the change in index number is going to be obviously very high. And that explains the reason why anytime there is a change in price of food grains, the inflation rate in India happens to have a significant change because its weightage is very high. Got it? In fact, within this food basket, these perishable commodities like onion, tomato do also has a decent weightage. Because they are just basically necessary, part and parcel of our daily use. Am I right? You cannot imagine anything in India without onion and tomato. Isn't it? Got it? So, the reason why India is experiencing high inflation, no doubt the Russia-Ukraine war has resulted in increase in cost of some raw materials, which increase in rise in price of mostly manufactured goods. But the primary reason behind high rate of inflation in the last 2-3 years is primarily due to rise in price of perishable goods. That too onion and tomato. And I don't need to prove this. You yourself might have come across this, isn't it? 2 years back, there were times where the price of tomato has gone beyond 200 rupees per kilo in this market. You also have come across an interesting story. 2 farmers in Maharashtra, they have become lakpati. I mean, they made millions by selling tomatoes. And it's so strange in India, it happens the very next month, farmers who happen to cultivate onions or tomatoes, they have been forced to sell it to 5-6 rupees per kilo in wholesale market. 2 महीने का पहले 200 है, 2 महीने के बाद 10 रुपये. It happens. Right? You got it? So why would generally you pay more for onions during certain part of year and you pay much less for the same onion during a certain part of the year? What's the reason? Is it just because of change in demand or is it because of change in supply? Why do the price of onion and tomato are so volatile? Is it just because during certain months people of India go crazy, eat a lot of onions? It's just because of change in supply. You accept it? Right? Yes. So that's the reason. Okay, inflation is a phenomenon of rise in price. But that could happen because of rise in demand or fall in the supply. Right? So that being the reason, we do classify inflation as demand pull inflation and cost push. Also, you could refer as supply shock. So increase in cost of production, a lack of enough resources available would result in an increase in price of goods and services. Of course, there's other type of inflation, what people refer as a bottleneck structural inflation. Because the way you produce things, the way you move things, right? Bad roads, lack of storage facilities, isn't it? You guys getting it? Would also result in increase in prices. Am I right? No, outdated technology. There could be other reasons, what we call supply, okay, isn't it structural inflation, bottleneck inflation. Let's not bother much about it. And that could be a problem that could be solved only when you just invest good amount of money on infrastructure, a long-term solution. But in general, inflation is a short-term phenomenon. Either rise in price or fall in price is mostly due to mismatch in supply and demand. You accept it? Okay, yes. So we're going to come back to inflation, but let me ask you a simple question. Agar if the economy is experiencing deflation, that is a fall in demand. Okay, supply has relatively remained same, but there's been a severe fall in demand because people have no enough jobs. And since there is a falling demand, because people cannot afford to spend a good amount of money, producers obviously trying to cut down their production. And since producers are cutting their production, that's resulting in rise in unemployment. And that rising unemployment further results in falling income, and that turns to become a vicious cycle. Clear? Now put yourself into the shoes of either RBI governor or finance minister. Because it's bad, right? Just now I happen to show you the vicious cycle. It's bad for any economy because output is falling, income levels is falling, lack of income resulting in fall in prices. Henceforth, the producers are further cutting their output. The economy is experiencing a severe contraction. Got it? If that is what you're experiencing, what could be an ideal solution? What do you think you could do?
Put money in hands of
Hmm?
put money in hands
Put money in the hands of people. Create more employment opportunities. Okay, very good. See, that's it. Because, see, the question itself has an answer too. In fact, the problem primarily I have already given you is falling demand. And if you've been asked to address the challenge, it's simple. इसका solution क्या है? Boost demand. Am I right? Just boost the demand. And how could you boost the demand? Okay, so these gentlemen over there said, let government simply spend more money. Isn't it? So rather than simply saying all these things, I'll just simply say, let the government take the responsibility of stimulating economy. And how could you stimulate economy? By increasing expenditure or cutting down taxes or doing both simultaneously. Yes or no? And that's what we have done during COVID. Atmanirbhar Bharat package. Kabhi suna? Madam Nirmala Sitharaman has brought around 20 lakh crore worth Atmanirbhar Bharat package. Even during 2008-9 financial crisis, the same thing what the government has done. It has increased the spending enormously, cut down excess duty from 12 to 8%, service tax from 12 to 8%. Why? At times the economy is contracting, the best thing, stimulate it. Like when you are sleeping and teacher cracks a joke, you will become more alert. Isn't it? There's other way. Take tappad maro. Also become more alert. Am I right? I mean to say not simply so hard that you might go to coma, isn't it? Generally, if people faint, what do? They gently slap. They gently slap. Because this has the ability to, okay, make you conscious. Isn't it? Stimulus. Okay, so I've been saying stimulus. Isn't it? Right? Induces you to perform. Am I right? Yes or no? So something like, okay, a sugar candy or a dark chocolate. Always better to have when you just sit in the class for a long, okay, isn't it? It's better to always have, okay, dark chocolate. When I say dark chocolate has been a small chocolate that you slowly chew. Don't bring in kilos of chocolate. Isn't it? A cup of coffee as you wake up from bed does make sense. But you have a coffee of 1 liter. Isn't it? Does make sense. Like it said, behind every man's success there is a woman. And if you want to be more successful and get married to two, disaster. Too much of stimulus is bad. Am I right? So government just go for war spending results in inflation. Forget about reviving your economy. The economy experiences severe contraction due to very high rate of inflation. Isn't it? Right? That's what I will say. So if the problem is lack of enough demand, economy is contracting, the best way to help economy recover is boost the demand, and that's what you could do through fiscal measures. Is the only way? No, there is other alternative. That is monetary stimulus. What do you mean by monetary stimulus? How do you be, okay, how could an RBI, the monetary authority, could boost demand through monetary measures? This is something we already discussed. Cut down the tax, increase the expenditure, either of it or a combination, dono mila ke. Okay, that's been n number of times Isn't it? We've been doing. Like I'm just giving you these examples, not only 1 or 2 times. During COVID, we have done the same thing. During COVID, not only Madam Nirmala Sitharaman has gone with 20 lakh crore Atmanirbhar package. Even the RBI governor has cut down the repo rate to 4%. Isn't it? Why did you think he has cut down the repo rate to 4%? How does it help? How does cutting repo rate to 4% would help? See, repo rate or simply the policy rate. Can I call it a monetary stimulus? In what way? Because this itself is a policy rate. And this policy, this benchmark policy rate is going to influence almost any kind of lending rate in this country. Yes or no? See, if this rate comes down, obviously the lending rate of interest, whether it's a housing loan, okay, whatever the loan, isn't it, would come down. What if the interest rates in the market comes down? Don't you think the demand increases? I mean, it's as simple as that. If I offer you, isn't it, credit? Let's suppose if I simply come with an offer to this gentleman, better, I'm going to lend you 100 crores. And you don't need to pay me a single penny as an interest. All that I'm expecting is to give me my money back 10 years later. Would you accept or would you refuse? Would you accept or would you refuse? 100 crore loan, 0% interest rate, 10-year repayment period. Yes or no? Definitely yes. Isn't it? Same logic holds good. When the interest rates comes down, it incentivizes people to borrow and spend. Incentivizes corporates to borrow and invest. That's, isn't it? Capital is available at cheaper rates. And don't you really think the consumption spending, investment spending, that obviously boosts the demand, right? So that's how I could stimulate the economy. Through monetary measures or through fiscal measures. So, if an economy is experiencing, because the reason why we've been discussing is, if the economy is experiencing deflation due to falling demand, deflation was the falling price, due to falling demand, you could just simply revive the demand, boost the demand. You resort to any of these policy measures. Am I right? And your actions would result in reinflating the prices. Am I right? The problem is falling price, and this is because of falling demand, and your actions of boosting demand would result in reinflating the prices. Am I right? I mean, prices tends to, rather than fall, they tend to rise. And that's the reason we happen to use a term called reinflation, which is basically, the reflation is basically a short form of reinflation. Reinflation. So generally counter the fall in price, isn't it? Again, if it is because of demand, the solution is boost the demand. And that would result in reinflation of prices. In simple terms, we call a reflation. But again, imagine the fall in price is not because fall in demand. It's because of a huge supply. Like I said, like say many times onions, tomatoes, isn't it? They would be traded 100 and 200 rupees per kilo. Kabhi, okay, it might also happen they would trade at 5 kilos per 100, 20 rupees per kilo. Onions, it happens in India. Why does it happen? Because of enormous increase in supply. Now imagine that there's been a bumper harvest of onions. And there's a lot of supply in the market, and henceforth prices has experienced steep fall. And the farmer is really unhappy for it. Isn't it? Because of consistent and persistent fall in price, the farmer is quite unhappy. And let's suppose this is happening every season. What if you have been expected to address this challenge? What would you do? Because problem is, farmer, whatever the output the farmer happens to bring it to market, he is experiencing a rapid fall. And now your chief minister or your prime minister said, "Beta, kuch to kar do." That's your job. Isn't it? Right? And the problem you figured out is demand has more or less remained the same. Because the demand for onions in India in month on month doesn't change. Do you accept it better? With increase in population, with increase in spending, maybe it might change over a period of time. But week to week, month on month, the demand for onion doesn't change, right? It remains relatively stable for a certain period of time. But the problem of is enormous increase in supply of onion, tomato prices are falling. What would you do? You see, look at it again. I've been saying that it doesn't require any complex math, or you don't simply look at the way you look at rocket science. Prices are falling. Why? Supply is too much. Then it. And if you really want to protect the farmers, what's your obvious goal is to increase the prices. Just reinflate it. How could you just remove the excess from the market? Right? Just remove the excess. How do you remove the excess? Okay, yeah, maybe one way to remove the excess is, these people say, incentivize exports. Okay, but at the same time, I guess you also heard about certain nodal agencies of government. Have you heard about them? Okay, in fact, like I am expecting that you're regularly going to newspaper. These are three nodal agencies that's been in news in the last 2 years very frequently. Anyway, FCA, I guess everyone have heard about it. Food Corporation of India. And what does NCCF stand for? National Consumers Cooperative Federation. NAFED, National Agriculture Cooperative Marketing Federation. Okay, I mean, how do you know about, FCA? What do you think, FCA does? Generally, its purpose क्या करते हो? Maintains buffer stock. Where does get that buffer stock? It maintains buffer stock. Okay, but where do you think it gets that particular food grains to maintain as a buffer stock? Is FCA cultivating food grains, sir? No, then कहाँ से मिल रहा है? Farmers. That's it. So, in fact, in India, primarily, FCA happens to play a very important role in procuring food grains. One, because the government, you know the fact that before every agricultural season makes announcement related to MSP. When you make a commitment to the farmers at the time of sowing the crop, this is the minimum price I guarantee for your agri produce. Someone in the market has to take the responsibility to ensure farmer gets the desired price. If no agency of state intervenes in the market, then the market would end up paying whatever is the price determined by the demand and supply, right? Yes or no? Someone has to take the responsibility of removing the surplus from market in order to bring the prices on par with MSP, right? So that's where FCA plays a predominant role in ensuring farmer gets that particular promise committed by government. And how do you ensure that the prices farmer gets paid would be the price government promises? Is just simply go buy it from the market. And out of whatever the FCA buys from the market, it happens to, one, basically it plays a very important role in ensuring the farmers do get paid MSP by procuring from the market, by actively participating in procurement. That's the reason the practice of FCA or any agency procuring food grain from the market, we call open market procurement. The FCA opens procurement centers across different parts of India, says, farmers, if you're interested, do come to my market, do come to the place where I'm procuring, you're free to sell your output. And my commitment kya hai? I'm going to pay you minimum whatever the government of India promised as MSP. Isn't it? So even though the market has huge surplus and the price in market is very low, but I'm willing to pay you MSP. And in general, FCA follows an open-ended procurement policy. Does mean until you are willing to sell, I am willing to buy. So it does mean me actively participating in procurement would ensure that the farmer doesn't need to go for a distress sale. Am I right? Because when you take it to trader, wholesaler, he says there's an abundant supply, I don't like to pay an MSP. Because he knows the fact there's an enormous amount of supply. But when you have an alternative like FCA who says, bring me any amount of output, I'm going to pay you minimum MSP, then obviously the trader is now compelled to pay the MSP. So that's how FCA actively procuring food grains through open market procurement does ensure the farmers in India do get paid MSP. That's the one major job FCA performs. The second thing FCA does is it also plays a primary responsibility in ensuring food security. Because a major quantity of food grain that we been distributed in PDS outlets mostly is procured and distributed by FCA. But many times the FCA, beyond all this, also maintains enough as buffer stock. Why do the FCA is also going to maintain a buffer stock in case if the price of food grains rise due to lack of enough supply? Okay, what does these agencies do? They bring it to the market, now performs. Iska pehle they happen to procure when there's surplus. When there is a shortage, they go for an open market sale. So what does FCA does? They bring it, okay, bring this food grains to market and place it for sale. So since there is shortage resulting in rise in prices, when they bring this buffer stock to market and start selling it, prices obviously comes down. So that's how FCA plays a very important role in stabilizing food grain prices. Am I right? It ensures farmer does get paid a decent price by simply removing surplus. And it also protects the interests of consumers when prices increase by performing open market sale. So to protect farmer interests, it conducts open market procurement, removes surplus, so that price gets reinflated. And to stop further rise in price of food grains, it performs open market sale. In fact, in good old days, the open market sale, mostly the one who used to participate is the wholesalers, traders. But many times it happens if the traders are the one buying it, they might manipulate. They just simply create an artificial shortage by increasing their stockpile, hoarding it. But now I guess you know the fact the government of India started selling these food grains through these agencies in the retail markets directly. How many of you heard about this brand? Okay, Bharat Atta, Bharat Rice. Never have come across this? In the name of, okay, in this name of this brand. The government itself is now selling the rice, atta, okay, directly to the retailers. Okay, the Bharat rice, the 1 kilo rice is available at 25 rupees. Iska pehle the FCA used to sell it to the traders. But now the government itself is doing this job of directly selling in the retail markets to stabilize the prices. Am I clear now? So the logic is simple. When there is a surplus in market resulting in fall in prices, solution is remove the surplus. When there is shortage in the market resulting in increase in prices, solution is add or increase the supply. That's it. So what do you think you're going to do to increase in supply? That's your business. But generic solution is increase supply when there is a shortage. When prices fall because of excessive supply, remove the supply. Right? So that's what I've been asking you. In case the price fall in India is because of enormous rise in supply, one, you could just remove the excess. Okay, see, the government could incentivize exporters. Right? Or the government could ask this procurement, okay, these nodal agencies, hurry, you go and procure, help my farmers, protect their interests, you go and procure. And it's not FCA does this job. We also have the other nodal agencies, NCCF, NAFED also do the same job. In fact, last time when the price of onion, tomato started increasing, these agencies are the one who happened to directly bring this produce and started selling it 25 kilo, okay, 25 rupee per kilo in retail markets directly. Am I clear now? So when there is a fall, I mean, if the problem is fall in price due to increase in supply, simple solution is remove the excess surplus. Am I clear now? Isn't it? But any such practice would result in increasing prices. And that's what I'm calling a reinflation, in short form what we call a reflation. So inflation, deflation, which is also called negative inflation, and then a reflation. Clear now? Yes. Now, let me ask you simple. How do you define a term disinflation? Disinflation का मतलब क्या है? Not no inflation, it's a fall in rate of inflation. Deflation is fall in price. Disinflation is fall in rate of inflation. Fall in rate of inflation is disinflation. That means inflation rate. Or let me give an example. Let's say the price of chocolate is 40. chocolate or anything. Let's say potato. The price of potato per kilo is 40. Next month it has gone up to 80. And then 120. 160. I mean, let's say every month is going. Let's say again it has come down to 120. Potato. This is how for 5 consumers prices have changed. So does mean there is a change by the same amount constant, which is 40 plus 40 and minus 40. Right? 40, okay, 80. Yes or no? 80 has become 120. So now let's look at these 2 months. So if you've been asked, definitely you know the fact there's an increase in price by 40 rupees. And if you've been asked to express this in terms of percentage, by what rate the price have gone up? Rate of inflation kitna hai? 100%. Why? How did you compute? Okay, change in price. What's the change in price? 80 minus 40 in comparison to the previous month price. Kitna? 40. So obviously, isn't it? It's a 100%. But A minus ki inflation kitna? 40 upon 120. You say it's only 50%. Am I right? Yes or no? Sorry, 40 upon 120, this is 33. Oh, sorry. Yeah, when it comes to this, see, I just compared. Okay, the reason I have written, simply, in fact, I have written in a wrong column. Let's say 160, 120. Change is 40 upon 120. What's the change? 33.33%. But it's my 120, 80. Isn't it? Change is 40 upon 80 is 50%. For this month, it's 33%. And for this month, it is minus 25%. Am I clear? Any confusion? So the mistake I have written, okay, so whatever I should write here is what I have written. So this month inflation is 100%, 50, 33.33 minus 20. The price change is by the same amount. So let me simply explain that all these 3 months experience a positive rate of inflation, price increase. And this rate of change is negative, we call it deflation. I hope. Inflation, negative inflation, deflation. Clear, right? Yes. But you notice, though there is a rise in price, forget about this month. Okay, just to explain what is deflation, I use this example. But all these 3 months experience a rise in price. But the inflation rate is coming down. Accept it. And this is what I'm calling a disinflation. There is an inflation, but the rate of inflation is coming down. Disinflation. Am I clear? So what is falling is not price. What is falling is rate of inflation. But now let me use the same example to explain one more concept. Look at it. Every month the change in price is by 40 rupees. Yes or no? When 40 rupee onion or 40 rupee potato increased to 80, you said, oh my God, 100% rate of inflation. When 80 rupee onion has gone up to 120, which is again a 40 rupee increase, you're just saying, are 50%. And when 120 increased to 160, which is again a 40 rupees, you're just saying, it's 33.33%. So when the change in price is by the same amount, constant amount of 40, why is the rate of inflation is changing? Yes? Yeah, that's just because the base, every time you're just comparing, isn't it? The change in price with a base. Am I right? So since the base with which we are comparing, we compared here with 40, we compared here with 80, we are comparing here the change with 120. So the base with which we are comparing, it's changing. That's the reason the rate of inflation is also changing. Though the change is by the same amount, but the base with which we are comparing is different. Right? So the base with which you are comparing is very low. Then the inflation rate seems to be very high. The base with which you compare is very high. Then the inflation rate seems to be very low. It's as simple as that. Let's say if I ask you, okay, where do you put your IQ levels? Let's say this is your IQ. Okay, if I ask you, is your IQ level very high, very low? Right? If that's the question. So generally seeing about IQ levels, isn't it? Right? Maybe you might not be aware of your score or all these things. Let's say you don't know, okay, you cannot put it in numbers as of now, but let's say where would you place your IQ level with Elon Musk IQ level? So let's say this is my reference line, Elon Musk ka IQ. Where do you place your IQ levels? Far above, far below. Be honest. Huh? Far above, far below. Or above or below? On par. Above. Paka? Huh? I said be honest. Above. TK. Some people would like to place a above. Very good. Anyone? Some of you would think maybe on par. To be honest, something below. Isn't it? Because at least when it comes to yourself, you should be true to yourself. Isn't it? Right? Yes. But agar if I simply replace the reference point with Joe Biden. Okay. And don't say it's below. If you believe your IQ levels is far above Elon Musk, then don't ever say it's below the Joe Biden. Where do you put your IQ levels? Huh? Far above, far below? Above. It's as simple as that. I am asking, I forgot her name, Deepika. See, is Deepika shorter or taller? Huh? Shorter or taller? Yes. That depends on the base. That depends on base. She is taller than this chair. Isn't it? Shorter than compared to this pillar. Isn't it? So now you might be asking, so how come should be taller and shorter? Yes, that depends on the base with I am comparing. Isn't it? Same thing. Isn't it? Right? So your IQ levels, isn't it? Where does it stand? Depends on the base, the reference point. So the reason is same. The same logic is what I am explaining. In fact, it's a mathematical phenomenon. That explains the same reason why during COVID we experienced a contraction by 5.8%. The very next year, the growth rate has gone up by 9.7%. Reason behind such a phenomenal growth is because of low base. Of course, we have experienced a rise in output. But why it seems to be so high? Because the base is very low. Because last year output has come down. Isn't it? Yes or no? Since the last year output, the base you are comparing is less. Isn't it? This saal ka recovery seems to be very high. You guys getting it? Same is the case. Inflation. In this case, base effect. You understood? So the impact of previous year price, the impact of previous output on your current performance. We call it say base effect. Am I clear now? Understood? Yes. So inflation, deflation, reflation, disinflation. Then how do you explain stagflation? It's basically combination of two words, stagnation plus inflation. No doubt you all know about inflation, but how do you explain stagnation? Matlab kya? Stagnation. What is stagnated? Stagnation. Stagnation itself indicates no change. Then how do you simply say increase? Let's say you say the waters are stagnated, isi wajah se the mosquitoes are breeding. Am I right? Only when water is stagnated. Matlab, what do you mean water stagnated? No change, no movement, right? So what do you mean by economic stagnation? No change. Isn't it? In the economic activity. So neither rise in output nor fall in output. Give me an example of economy that has been experiencing stagnation. Japan, for more than 2 decades, Japanese economy is stagnated. Neither rise nor fall. The output remain more or less the same. I don't mean to say absolutely no change, but it's very low compared to their potential. Because look at the way Japanese economy happens to grow in 20th century. And look at the last 20 years. In fact, prior to 2000, everyone used to believe that the 21st century would be dominated by Japan. But aajkal zamane no one speaks about it. Rather, the South Korea happens to overtake Japan. And all markets that were being commanded, isn't it, by Japan is now being captured by South Korea. Look at LG, Samsung, isn't it? The Hyundai cars. But in good old days, it's Mitsubishi, Toyota, Sony, all Japanese goods. Right? But now market. Even they have been capturing a food market also. You might be eating your favorite choco pie, Lotte, choco pie. And even that Lotte company also from South Korea. Got it? Like the hare and tortoise story. You know the hare and tortoise story? You've been taught in school days, right? Same. It stagnated, which means South Korea has surpassed it. So stagnation, no considerable change in output. Same time, inflation, prices are rising. We call phenomena stagflation. In fact, this is one of the most difficult challenge for any economy. Why? Because the traditional solution we discussed, when the economy is experiencing contraction, we happen to come with a solution that is stimulated. Yes or no? But again, imagine if the economy is overly stimulated. I mean, imagine, okay, whenever the demand is falling, we said the best solution to, is boost demand, stimulate the economy. And there are different ways of stimulating economy: monetary measures, fiscal measures. But again, imagine the economy is being overheated because of lot of demand, is much more than supply, then resulting in a very high rise in price. What do you think the authorities are expected to do? Contain the demand to contain the prices. Am I right? Do exactly opposite to what you are doing. So when it comes to stimulating economy, what does monetary authorities do? They reduce the interest rate. When it comes to contain demand, what do? They increase the interest rate. So when you increase interest rates, people who no longer would be happy borrowing and spending. That reduces demand. Reduction demand would result in fall in or at least would stop rising prices. Am I right? So to contain inflation, we expect monetary authorities would go for a tight money policy. To boost the economy or to boost demand, they go for a easy money policy. Expansionary policy or contractionary policy is what I'm calling as easy money policy, tight money policy. But if you look at a situation of this kind, there's already inflation, rise in price, and stagnation. Unemployment is rising. Now let's suppose you come with a traditional solution. You thought of boosting economy through stimulus measures. What happens? You would help in reviving economy, which results in increase in output, results in increase in employment. But what happens? That makes this worse. Right? You guys getting it? But if you think of containing this inflation and try to bring down the demand by going for a contractionary policy, then this further worsens. Unemployment further rises. Right? So the traditional solution that you've been aware of, tight money policy, easy money policy. Easy money policy boosts demand, tight money policy contains demand. Isn't it? Expansive fiscal policy, contractionary fiscal policy wouldn't solve the problem here. Why? If you try to contain inflation by reducing demand, your unemployment further increases. If you try to boost the demand by simply going for stimulus package, stimulus measures, your inflation rises. So it's really a difficult challenge. And that itself is the reason, in fact, in spite of Japan being stagnated, isn't it? They're able to survive for more than 2 decades. And that's the reason even dunya is quite surprised. How come? 1-2 saal later TK, these people, beyond expectations. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, still they recovered. Yes or no? Isn't it? 2 decades of stagnation, still they are surviving. There's something interesting with Japanese people. Am I right? Yes. So, let's not discuss much, isn't it? The more we discuss about them, the more inferior we have to feel. Why? Why? What they are very good at is what we are really bad at. Very good. At least one recognized discipline, punctuality. Isn't it? None of them is beyond our imagination. Right? Yes. So come back. So stagnation, inflation, deflation, reflation, okay, disinflation, stagflation. Okay? Yes. Let me also make other terms clear. So I'll explain using example of Japan, but it's beyond our classroom discussion because, okay, yes, what Japanese have done, I would explain. So that's itself, okay. In fact, for that matter, they are not successful. The reason Japanese economy is experiencing stagnation for a very strange reason. I think you know the problem for them is aging. That proportion of productive age group to dependent age group is reducing. People within productive age group, working age group, reducing because life expectancy is very high. Because very good investments in health infrastructure, 89 is their life expectancy at birth. Population growth has been stabilized almost some 3-4 decades back. So that does mean the birth rate, mortality rates is one and the same. Isn't it? Right. So that's the problem. Unlike the Western countries with huge, large size, US, UK, Canada, isn't it? Of course, forget about UK, US, Canada. No longer UK could be treated as a developed nation, isn't it? Right. So it's so highly indebted. Ignore UK, US, Canada, Australia. They could incentivize people to immigrate. But Japan ka problem dekho. Last year the Japanese government has come with an offer. Any citizen, residing in Tokyo, who is willing to move out of Tokyo to some countryside of Tokyo, because Tokyo is known for a city with the world's most population density. दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा densely populated city is Tokyo. India में what's the most densely populated city? India में it's the capital city itself. Tokyo में problem है, it's world's most densely populated city. And you would be surprised to know the problem is so bad. The government itself has come with an offer. The offer is just to relocate from the city, and I'm going to give you 1 million yen. Just move out. That's it. Okay, I'm going to give you 1 million yen. You could understand the problem, right? So it's simple. They have the capital. They have the technology. In fact, literally speaking, Japan is, if India is really in 2025, by this parameter, Japan is in 2070. Right? So they have everything required, but they don't have the major input, that's labor. And unlike the big countries, US, Canada, Australia, they cannot incentivize immigrants. आजकल जमाने at least they are just being supporting highly qualified immigration, skilled labor by. But again, the challenge is Japanese language mandatory. Even that's something they are very, isn't it? It's you cannot survive there without Japanese language. Education, हर एक चीज, isn't it? Unlike we Indians, they don't feel inferior and still hang on with this colonial mindset, English, because it's there is a movie in which generally he says that India mein the one who speaks nonsense is considered as an intellectual, and who speaks in English is considered as most talented. Am I right? We happen to evaluate a person's skill by looking at the language. Am I right? Someone who speaks very polished language, अरे यार talented है, पर क्या बोल रहे हैं? इसमें कुछ सेंस है? कुछ नहीं. बोल दो बकवास, but it should be in English. है ना? India में you have a very great treatment. Speak in mother tongue and speak the most important thing that really makes sense. But in general, people don't care much. Isn't it? So it's like generally India में, rather than what is being said, who is saying it is important. Sir, no? What if the same economy lecture is by Pawan Kalyan? We need to hire the NTR stadium. Am I right? Isn't it? So that's how things work. What is said is not important. Who is saying is more important. So coming back, so LIGO biflation. And a type of biflation is Qflation. So biflation matlab buy, 2, right? So it's simply a phenomenon where economy experiences both inflation and deflation simultaneously. ऐसी कैसी होता है? I don't mean the price of same good rise and also fall simultaneously. It's similar as when a certain basket experience rise in price, a certain basket experience fall in price. Could happen. Can that happen? So if such phenomena happens where a certain basket, like I say, imagine all software companies now allow their people to work from a remote location. So definitely it brings down the price of housing overall India. Am I right? Yes or no? Isn't it? But it doesn't mean that people, software engineers moving from Hyderabad city to rural India would result in reduction of fall in price of clothing, food, all these things, right? Isn't it? It might not happen. That too, at times when the software boom chal rahe to, the price of this basket increases. Clothing, because they go for shopping, isn't it? Yes, you go any week, isn't shopping mall, you could just find 90% of this IT youth. They have a good spending capacity because they are earning 5-digit salary. But agar imagine, isn't it? So if there is not enough demand for housing, prices might fall. You guys getting it? Okay? Yes. So understood, biflation does mean both happen simultaneously. Isn't it? Skewflation. Skewflation does mean the inflation is primarily due to a steep rise in price of certain category of goods and services. Like in India, the reason, in spite of core inflation remaining very core inflation, I guess you are aware, but inflation computed excluding food and fuel, core inflation. Even though the core inflation in India remained stable, but the overall rate of inflation in India is very high, primarily due to increase in price of the perishable commodities. Because they have decent weightage and that's simply the one dragging the inflation rate to very high. You got it? It's as simple as that. I'm looking at the average of your marks. Everyone performed mediocre. But these 4 kids has performed phenomenally well. What happens to average? So most of you happens to report a mediocre performance. But these 4 kids has performed exceptionally well, 100 out of 100. What happens to the average? That pulls the average to very high. Same thing. A large part of the basket of goods has hardly experienced any considerable change in price. But that particular commodity that has relatively decent weightage like food has experienced a steep rise in price would result in obviously very high rate of inflation. Such phenomenon is what we call skewflation. Understood? Skewflation. Maybe you might have studied in your school days about statistics, normal distribution, kurtosis, skewness, left skewed, right skewed. Yaad hai? Can you recollect it? At least do you remember a term called statistics? Thank God. Normal distribution, bell curve. Okay, TK. So TK, don't worry about that part, kurtosis, skewness and all these things. But I hope you understand what's the meaning of the word skewflation. Understood? Yes. Now, let me make it clear with respect to the other terms. Of course, आजकल जमाने में people happens to also use one more term called shrinkflation. कभी सुना the term shrinkflation? Like a very popular example they happen to give, Parle-G. Shrinkflation does mean, see at times prices rise. Isn't it? So many times what do people do? Rather than increasing price, they bring down the size of the product. Like I am school days, 5 rupees could buy Parle-G. Even now with 5 rupees you get Parle-G. Isn't it? But in my school days, 5 rupees Parle-G of this much size. Now it is of this much size. In my school days I could buy chocolate 5-star for 10 rupees. But that's of this much size. Now it is this. So rather than increasing price, what do people do? Just trying to play with the consumer mindset. That's what is called shrinkflation. That's it. There's hardly any complex meaning, right? Yes. And then headline inflation, core inflation. And in general, we in India also use an index called Consumer Food Price Index to measure food inflation. Okay, so don't worry about that, but let's start with headline inflation. What do you mean by headline inflation? Headline. May guess why is it called headline? What is the headline? Tell me what is the headline inflation in India? How do you measure headline inflation in India? Huh? Headline inflation in India is measured using CPI combined. And this is from 16. Iska pehle, what used to be the headline inflation? How do we used to measure it? Using wholesale price index. But how come that to this would make, isn't the headline inflation does change? Simple. Headline in this case does mean news headlines. Whatever the inflation the media reports in its headlines. What news is reported in headlines? Let's say Rahul Gandhi got married. Which page in the newspaper you find this news? First page. And Chaitanya got married. Media doesn't report at all. Chaitanya, yes, and you're Siddharth. Okay, Siddharth got married. Does any media reports it? Breaking news. Rahul getting married is a, Salman Bhai getting married is a breaking news. Headlines. But Siddharth getting married is a, right? Yes. Why? Huh? More people are concerned. Salman Khan getting married, isn't it? Yeah, it's logic, isn't it? Because it's not about, I don't say concern, but more people are eager to know, isn't it? Yes, that's it. Same is the case. Since 2016, the government has explicitly mandated RBI, Arey bhai dekho, your primary target of monetary policy is to target inflation, and that to inflation computed using CPI. So the government is worried about it. The monetary authority is also worried about it. Common man is also worried about the same inflation rate. So sabka, isn't it? Worry more or less the CPI based inflation. Everyone is curious to know what's the CPI based inflation rate. Am I right? You see, just say this inflation makes headlines in the newspaper. That's it. Iske alawa no, complex logic in it. Because that's what more people want to know. Salman Khan getting married is what more people are interested in knowing, isn't it? Okay, isn't it? Iska damad kaun hai, iska biwi kaun hai, isn't it? Blah, blah, blah. Right? But Siddharth getting married, even his neighbor doesn't want to know. Doesn't care. Am I right? That's things. That's it. Iske alawa no. So as of now, the headline inflation is measured using CPI combined. But as such, you remember I said the CPI does basically index tracks change in price of various basket of goods and services. Like wholesale price index may we categorize this basket around 696, if I'm not wrong, around 695 goods is what we track in the name of wholesale price index. And that is broadly categorized into primary articles, fuel, light, lubricants, and manufactured goods. The 695 are some three different categories. Primary articles, fuel, light, lubricants, and then manufacturing articles. That's how we happen to come with, compose a wholesale price index basket. Same is the case with consumer price index basket. 45% in food. Some 4-5% with respect to tobacco, pan masala, intoxicants. Some for, weightage for housing. Some for footwear. Some for clothing. Got it? Yes. So headline inflation is the overall inflation. But out of the entire basket, in general, the price of food and fuel, especially in a country like India, the price of food and fuel, especially a country like India, are highly volatile. Yes or no? No matter how strong the economic fundamentals, we would have a very stable economy. We also might have a political stability. But Lord Varuna is not happy with the Indian people. What happens to food prices? Isn't it? So just people still say Indian economy is a gamble on monsoon. Am I right? Do you guys accept it? Our economy is a gamble on monsoon. In fact, 2020 budget mein, Madam Nirmala Sitharaman has presented a very rosy picture in February. But March mein, Chinese has given a surprise. 2020 I am referring to. Right, isn't it? Anything could happen. So that's what I mean to say. Isn't food and fuel prices in India are highly volatile. Isn't it? So that being the reason, the common practice in India is we do happens to measure inflation by excluding food and fuel, and whatever the inflation that is being computed excluding food and fuel is what we call core inflation. So it's simply inflation computed excluding food and fuel category is called core inflation. Got it? Inflation computed excluding food and fuel is core inflation. Okay, and in general, since food happens to, that's where a good amount of money is being spent, and it simply concerns a large part of Indian society. That being the reason, हमारा देश में we also measure an exclusive index that tracks the change in price of food prices, and we call it a consumer food price index to measure food inflation, and that's an index that tracks the change in price of food. CFPI, Consumer Food Price Index. And excluding food and fuel, the inflation computed is core inflation. And the overall inflation rate that everyone is concerned is headline inflation. Got it? Which is also called as retail inflation, because retail inflation is computed using consumer price index. Retail inflation, CPI based inflation. Am I clear now? So I think, okay, every term that's required for inflation is clear. Isn't it? Yes. So before going ahead with answering the previous questions, let me also explain, okay, how inflation is really bad. How bad is inflation? So just now, when I asked you inflation, how do you define inflation? Okay, some people define, sir, it's a phenomenon of rise in price. But some of you said, no, it's fall in purchasing power of a rupee. Okay, purchasing power of a rupee. In fact, I'm just simply writing the same in a different form. Do you accept it, sir? Purchasing power of rupee, fall in purchasing power of rupee. Can I define it as an, okay, am I right? And that's what happens, inflation, isn't it? Rupee purchasing power falls. So when I ask you about the impact of high inflation, I'm just asking you the same thing. What happens when the rupee experiences a rapid fall in purchasing power? What happens? First and foremost is the overall spending capacity of people reduces. Am I right? Isn't it? Let's say today your 1 lakh rupees could buy itna bada basket. But everything in Hyderabad experiences tenfold rise in price. Then the same 1 lakh could buy itna or itna. Am I right? So the spending capacity of every person in Hyderabad or across India would reduce. Am I right? Yes or no? And this phenomena is what we simply say in simple terms as the real income of people reduces. Real income of people reduces. What do you mean by real income? Nominal income is the money you are getting paid, your salary, 1 lakh. Real income is the basket of goods and services your money could buy. Am I clear, sir? And don't you really think a great fall in purchasing power of rupee would result in fall in the basket of goods and services you could buy? You accept it? Right? So that's the reason. Your nominal income, the salary you are getting paid might remain the same, but the basket of goods your money could buy would reduce. It happens for everyone, right? Yes or no, Siddharth? You earn 5 lakhs, you earn 1 lakh, you earn 30,000, the basket of goods your money could buy would reduce. Like someone like Siddharth who is earning 5 lakh rupees, isn't it? Previously he used to spend 1 lakh rupees very lavishly, still have 5 lakh rupees in bank account. But now imagine Hyderabad mein everything, India mein everything has gone a 24 rise. And just simply to meet the basic necessities itself is costing Siddharth 4,99,999 rupees. Then do you think someone would make a call to Siddharth and say, Sarji, we are just launching a new venture, would you like to book a flat? We are launching a new vehicle, would you like to go for advance booking? No. Why Siddharth? इसका पहले आपका savings कितना 5 lakh, 4 lakh. Now आपका savings कितना है? 1 rupee. The reason they know the fact Siddharth doesn't have the purchasing capacity, right? So the basket of goods your money could buy would drastically reduce. And I'm just putting in a formal way, and I'm saying it's a real income. The money or the basket your goods could buy, money can buy reduces. That's what I mean, sir, real income falls. Am I clear, sir? So since it happens for everyone, can I end up concluding this, as this obviously results in overall demand in the economy? Isn't it? Isn't it? The overall demand in the economy reduces. Because iska pehle 1 lakh rupee for his maintenance. 1 lakh rupee for just gifting something to his girlfriend. 3 lakh rupees is savings. But if 4,99,999 rupees is the cost of living in Hyderabad, what the hell is going to give to his girlfriend? Right? So, sabka demand comes down. You accept it, Siddharth? Is that clear now? Yes. So, when the demand comes down, and I guess I don't need to explain the consequences. Isn't it? Not only the demand comes down, isn't it? Because the money you could buy reducing, the savings would also comes down. Am I right? People hardly have any money to save. Neither enough savings. Because your paisa public is, so you are bound to spend everything because your money is experiencing drastic fall in purchasing power. Left with nothing. And there is not enough demand. And you tell me, if you been an entrepreneur, would you like to simply go for risking borrowing money and then investing? Does it make sense? Okay, so iska matlab not only the household suffer, isn't it? Because of this, the producers, the production, isn't it, also gets hurt. Okay, they would cut down their output, right? Isn't it? No demand. Isn't it? It's as simple as that. Okay, the reason why Elon Musk for a long time is after Mr. Narendra Bhai Modi, asking him, why don't you let me sell my automobile at a lower import duty? Because he said, okay, I have very big plant in China. And if you insist me, because India as of now imposes 100% custom duty on a fully built-in automobile. But this man has built such a big factory, he cannot afford to. So he is asking the Prime Minister of India, Sirji, please do reduce import duty. That's how I could bring my Tesla cars from China to India. But the Indian government simply is saying that too, okay, I am not having any problem with your Tesla motor, but I am having a problem with the China fellow. Okay, bringing a car from China into my market without a low import duty is my concern. Not that my concern is with Elon Musk, my concern is with Xi Jinping. Right, in a way, the Prime Minister is asking you produce in my country. Okay, whatever you need, I am going to give it to you. That's what Prime Minister is saying. And he says, nice sir, I have itna bada plant, what the hell am I going to do? No, let me bring it at cheaper rate. And do you think the same man, okay, the same Elon Musk is after Kim Jong-un? No. Why? Why do you think Elon Musk doesn't at least think of meeting him? Because none of the North Koreans has the affordability. Yes or no? Isn't it? Why is he after Modi? Because he knows that India has a very big market. China mein, Tesla has a very big competitor, BYD. You heard about this company by name BYD, Build Your Dreams? That now is world's largest seller of battery vehicles, EV vehicles. India mein, isn't it? Tell me what is the competitor for Tesla Motors? Tesla Gadi. India mein. No, I don't really think in sooner or later there could be any company in India that could simply compete with Tesla if it comes to India, right? Yes or no? So that's what I'm saying. If okay, there's not enough demand, not enough consumption capacity, why would produce it? If that comes down, obvious. What's obvious? Unemployment rises. Okay, same thing, the vicious cycle. Am I clear? Isn't it? So not that only real income reduces, because of it, the real interest rates also fall. What do you mean by real interest rate? The interest rate adjusted to inflation. Interest rate adjusted to inflation. Let's say you save your money in a bank and bank pays you 5%. But simultaneously the inflation rate is 10%. That means your money in bank is making 5% every year. But your money, because of inflation, experiencing erosion of purchasing power by 10%. Tell me, beta Deepika, are you really making gains or loss? 100 rupees in bank is making you 5 rupees extra. But the same 100 rupees is losing purchasing power by 10%. That means to buy the same goods worth 100, एक साल के बाद at this rate, you need 110. But आपको कितना मिला? Placing that money in a bank, 105. Isn't it? So don't you think you're losing? So that's what I'm saying. Real interest rates fall, which is nothing but the nominal interest rate minus rate of inflation. And these are not standard acronyms. Just for, okay, to save time, I'm writing this. Real interest rate has been nominal interest rate minus rate of inflation. That's what it is. Tomorrow, once you start make money, when you'd like to keep your money in a bank, don't just get trapped in the rate of interest bank is promising you. You should always check yourself with the rate of inflation. It's as simple as tomorrow, if someone comes to you and offer, okay, I have a very interesting investment scheme. You just place your money in my scheme and I'm going to pay you regularly 6%. Isn't it? So you should not be happy for 6%. You should just simply look at compare with your inflation. Is that 6% more than the rate of inflation or less than the rate of inflation? You only think, Are, 100 rupees gives me 6 rupees. But what if they say 100 rupees experience of falling purchasing by 20%? Isn't it? So ideally you should just adjust your returns with inflation. So you should always look at real returns, not the nominal returns. Am I clear? Understood? Yes. So the real interest rates reduce when the inflation rate increases. Am I right? So no. In this case, it's little negative. If the real interest rates are negative, would you like to save money or spend money? Would you like to save when the real interest rate is negative? Yes, you don't like to save money, right? Isn't it? So by that logic, when the real interest rate is falling, okay, I could simply end up saying the creditor, the one who lends money or the one who would like to deposit money or save money would lose. Am I right? Creditor loses. Isn't it? The real returns you are making is very less. But the debtor gains. Debtor gains. But who is the debtor? The one who borrows. Because when I borrowed money, let's say, Deepika, when I borrowed money from you, 10 lakhs. That 10 lakhs is so valuable that I could buy this property. But inflation in this country has gone, 1 year May, has gone so high. Isn't it? Right? So I borrowed money from Deepika, 10 lakh rupees, and I promise her I'm going to pay after 1 year. Kitna 10% interest rate, let's say 11 lakhs. So 10 lakhs when I borrowed, that 10 lakhs is good enough to buy this property. But एक साल में इतना, okay, it happened that, okay, the inflation rate is so high. The 11 lakhs now I'm giving to her is not at least good enough to buy this panka, fan. Just imagine. मतलब है, don't you think I really happen to gain a lot? Reason? When I happen to borrow money, that money is so valuable, I could buy this entire property. And I am paying your money when the same money not at least could buy one fan in the building. Don't you think I happen to gain and she happened to lose? So, by that logic, what do you think is the best time to repay your loans? When the inflation rate is very high or very low? If you owe money to anyone, when is the right time to repay your loans? When the money is more, okay, has more purchasing power or very less purchasing power? That's been high rate of inflation, low rate of inflation. Very high rate of inflation. Isn't it? The best time to repay loans is money ends up becoming worthless. Isn't it? That's it. So that's what I mean to say. The real interest rates fall. Creditors lose, debtors gain. That disincentivizes people to save money. Rather, everyone is after spending money. Am I right? अगर आपके पास पैसे तो don't keep it, just simply spend it, throw it. Got it? So in fact, hardly anyone is immune from inflation. Yes or no? So does inflation has any effect on trade, exports, imports? Exports, imports. So we have seen it has impact on consumers, producers, financial institutions. Okay, before going, does inflation has any impact on government of India? Because you think it's very powerful. Does inflation has any impact on government of India or you think it's immune? Casey, then how does it have an effect? In what way government of India also has to bear the pain of inflation? What happens? Taxes will impact. But in what way? Rise, fall, remain same. कुछ तो बोल दो. Let's say when I say government of India, let's look at it from two different aspects: expenditure and income. What happens to the expenditure of the state at times of high inflation? Rise, fall? Huh? Rise. Why? Because the employees expect more salary. DHI हमको ज़्यादा, dearness allowance. Cost of living is increasing, compensate. Am I right? Yes. Some people who think that the prices of some commodities beyond reach, they expect subsidies. You bear the burden. Isn't it? Yes or no? Isn't it? At the same time, even government also would end up consuming some goods, GFC, government final consumption expenditure. So by default, the expenses of government increase. You accept it? Then the steel I buy, cement I buy, everything rise, expense rise in price, my expense increases. Then revenue falls. Why? Why would revenue fall? Income fall? What's the say? Okay, what's the major source of income, Siddharth? Tax. So you tell me by this logic, at least at times of high inflation, what happens? Tax revenue, rise or fall? Huh? Whatever it is. Fall. Why? Just now we discussed here, low demand. Low demand. Isn't it? Not only indirect taxes. If it persists, even direct tax fall. Why? No jobs. Isn't it? No corporate profits. Why do you think it's only indirect taxes? Isn't it? It's hard no. Because no one is buying. Isn't it? I'm not producing. I'm not producing anything. Profits come down. Then the tax would also come down. So, in general, the revenues would come down. Because the demand is low. So, iska matlab hai, your expenses are increasing and your income is falling. So, by that logic, what do? You should so iska matlab even so-called powerful government of India is not immune. In fact, for that matter, even God is immune, not immune. Am I right? If coconut happens to cost you 200 bucks rather than 20 bucks, would you offer it to God? 1 liter milk, 4,000 rupees. So would you offer to Shiva on Monday? No, right? Say, no one is immune. Right? So now my question is, will inflation have any effect on exports and imports? Huh? Just because I have come out generalized statement that is none of economic agents immune, you are saying it. Like Casey. What happens to exports when there is a very high inflation? Rise, fall. Okay. Yeah, simple. I'm not asking you what is the government going to do. What happens when the economy, domestic inflation rate is very high? Import falls. Okay, to make things much more simple, I am simply giving you a clue. Assume that the inflation we are discussing is only demand pull inflation. The inflation is only demand pull inflation. Okay, Indian public has lot of money. They're spending with both the hands, spending too much money. Too much money chasing too few goods. Demand pull inflation. Now the question is, what could be the impact of domestic inflation rate on exports and imports? Is that what you say? Right? Do you accept that? Demand pull. Because see, Indians happens to have a good purchasing capacity. Because generally, why do people export goods? In general, why would people export goods? Surplus. Surplus है तो ठीक है चलता है, but in general, why would people export? Just mean that अगर India doesn't have any surplus, doesn't mean India would not export. And all that we export is only surplus. People export just because they get a better price. That's the rationality. Surplus है तो anyway you should take it out. वो तो अलग है. But generally, why would people export? Business of every business is to make money. If people in India cannot afford to pay 100 rupees per, okay, isn't it? Okay, let's say 10 rupees per chocolate, but the neighboring country, Sri Lanka, is willing to pay 200 rupees for the same chocolate. It does make sense selling my chocolate in Sri Lanka rather than Indians. Am I right? People export not that they are surplus. Primarily due to The reason they get a better price. But agar Indians themselves are having a better purchasing capacity and they themselves are willing to pay a decent price, why would I export? Isn't it? Moreover, look at it. Because of increase in price of goods and services in India, the increase in price of goods, of Indian goods, would discourage foreign consumption of Indian goods. Why? Why? Let's say $1 is 80 rupees and rupees 20 can buy you one chocolate bar. So now every American for $1 could buy 4 chocolate bars. Yes or no? Isn't it? But imagine the exchange rate remains the same, but the chocolate bar has gone up to 40. Now the chocolates he buys from India is only 2. Clear? The foreign consumption of Indian goods has come down from 4 to 2. Yes or no? That itself is a proof that our exports comes down. Because export is foreign consumption of Indian goods, right? Isn't it? That's it. And at the same time, okay, so somewhere from 20, if the chocolate price has gone up to 40, definitely China would think, "Arey yaar, ye to good opportunity hai." Isn't it? Yes or no? Indians have gone so crazy, paying $40 for a chocolate, then Chinese would say, "Ticket, chalo, dump." Isn't it? Because we are buying more, or spending capacity more, so exports fall, import rise. You accept it? Here is a simple logic. Isn't it? When 20 rupees is a chocolate bar, 80 rupees can buy him. Because 80 rupees is what he gets for the dollar, he could get 4 chocolates. If the same chocolate bar is 40, he could only get 2 chocolates. Isn't it? That's it. Iske alawa what is required, right? Exports fall because of rise in domestic prices. And since India's consumption capacity is increasing, imports might rise. And you would extend this logic further. Let's say, okay, as per your logic, exports are falling, imports are rising. What happens? Fall in exports results in dollar supply. Increase in imports results in dollar demand. Yes or no? Do you accept it? Only when we buy, sell something to foreign, we earn some foreign money. But on the contrary, what's happening? Our exports are falling, imports are rising. So it has been that dollars we earn is reducing, the dollar we spend is increasing. Isn't it? Isn't it? इसका consequence है, इसका consequence है? Huh? What do you want me to write? Depreciates. When I say in this case, down arrow, depreciates against dollar. Because there's too much demand for dollars, too less supply for dollars. Isn't it? Yes or no? Yes. So, inflation. At least now accept the fact that very high inflation is really bad for the economy. Because everything gets adversely affected. Okay? So that explains the reason why inflation should be within the reasonable limits. Got it? So to control inflation, you should measure inflation. And that's what's going to be the last part of inflation. So how do you measure inflation? I think GDP deflator. You all might heard about it. GDP deflator. How do you measure GDP deflator? Nominal GDP divided by real GDP. So how do you define this nominal GDP? Okay, simply you could also simple. And how do you measure rate of inflation using GDP deflator? It's a GDP deflator of the current year or the current quarter. Okay, let's say this year of GDP deflator, or simply its rate of change in GDP deflator, n-1 divided by GDP deflator, n-1 gives you the rate of inflation. Rate of change, that's it. Nominal GDP, GDP measured at current market prices. Real GDP, GDP measured at constant price or base year price. What's the base year right now? 17, 18. Okay, but okay, isn't what's the base year that we use to measure the real GDP? Huh? 11, 12, 17, 18. Okay, कुछ तो बोल दो. हाँ, ठीक है? Yes. Understood? Of course, ideally the base is supposed to be revised once in every 5 years. It's supposed to be, not mandatory. So National Statistical Commission of India says the base year has to be revised at least once in every 5 years. But as of now, okay, by that logic, don't ever think it's 2020, because when you choose a base basically, what do you mean base year? A reference. Base is a reference. Isn't it? What might go bad if you choose 2020 as a base year? It's a very bad reference point. Why? Severe contraction. Isn't it? It's as simple as that. You're just trying to perform, okay, compare your performance, isn't it, this semester with the previous semester. And previous semester is one of your worst performance in the entire academic career, isn't it? Then I think it's not an actual reference point. Am I right? Yes or no? Because previous semester there is a failure in love story. Depressed. Isn't it? Your CGPA has come from 9 to 4. Next semester you recovered because किसी और मिला. New girlfriend, new energy, 4 to 5, and you're happy that there's 25% improvement because 4 GPA to 5. You think there's a 25% improvement, isn't it? And you're very happy. I don't think it does make sense. Am I right? Yes or no? Because your potential is 8. You are 8-pointer. Isn't it? So when you happens to score from 4 to 5, you still need to feel unhappy. The reason is your reference actually has to be 8, your potential. But rather you're happy because last sem 4 hai. Abhi to 5 hai. Isn't it? Okay. So if you think that 25% improvement hai, and you just try to think of celebrating it, kuch to gadbad hai. So same logic applies. Base reference point always. It's as simple as that. You're just looking at your performance. Would you compare your marks with the worst performer? Let's say you are the 32nd rank. You think, there are 18 people behind me, and does it make you happy, or you would be unhappy because there are 31 people who are doing better than you? What do you do better? Yes. Same thing holds good a reference. So when you choose a particular year as a reference year, base year, it should ideally be a stable year. When it says stable, does mean economic stability. That should be the year ideally you need to choose to evaluate your performance. Am I clear now? Yes. So that's the rationality. So 2020 cannot be a base year. Isn't it? In fact, the next 2 years even cannot be. The reason is because of Russia-Ukraine conflict, there's been a lot of instability. Isn't it? So that's it. But ideally, nominal does mean GDP measured at current market prices. Real does mean GDP measured at constant price or base year price. Does mean rather than using current price, we use the price prevailing in the base year. And we just consider a constant price and measure the real. And GDP deflator, okay, rate of inflation or rate of change in price could be computed by simply computing the rate of change in GDP deflator. If this positive, inflation, negative, deflation. Since GDP not necessarily compute on an annual basis, we do also compute a quarterly basis. So we could also get inflation on a quarterly basis using substituting the corresponding values. इसमें problem क्या है? Since you are considering the price of all goods and services, you will get to know the overall change in price of all goods and services. But in general, we are not concerned about the overall change in price of all goods and services. Am I right? Yes or no? We are only concerned with the basket. But look at the frequency. Either we measure on an annual basis or a quarterly basis. But inflation is always a short-run phenomena. It should be measured as frequently as possible. Yes or no? But in general, we don't compute GDP per month. Mostly, at max, we compute per a quarter. Am I right? Per annum. But inflation is short-run phenomena. Isn't it? So the frequency at which we measure is not on a monthly basis. Isn't it? That it gives you overall change in price. So that being the reason, rather than this, what people generally in India used to use in good old days is wholesale price index. It's an index, indicator, weighted average, In fact, the index weight average, geometric mean, it's not a arithmetic mean. It's a weighted average. In index, that tracks change in price of a certain basket of commodities, only goods in wholesale markets. वो definition में problem है. I mean, you could also understand the problem क्या है इसमें. Looking at the definition itself, it only tracks the change in price of goods. No services are included in this basket. But as common man, we are all worried about services too. Education, health, tourism, transportation, railways, postal, telecom, yes or no, what not? There have been n number of services to consume. But this index tracks the change in price of only a basket of goods. Roughly around 695 basket. And that 695 represents broadly three categories: primary articles, fuel, light and lubricants, and then manufactured goods. And each of these categories is given a weightage. Each of the commodity within that particular category is also given a weightage. So all 695 have the weightage. What's the formula for weighted average? How do you write it? Right? No, you don't need it. Simple average कैसे? Right? But to each of it, we are just adding a weight, adjusting based on weight. Because at the end of the day, we just want to figure out, isn't it? The one where we happen to spend a lot of money, isn't it? We want that to be reflected in the index number. Isn't it? By sending more weightage, we're just amplifying the change. Right? By multiplying with more weight does mean we're amplifying the change. So that the index reflects the corresponding rise in price. You guys getting it? That's the logic. But wholesale price index problem क्या है? It tracks change in price of only a basket of goods. That too in wholesale markets. How frequently you just go buy something in wholesale market? We are mostly concerned about change in price in retail markets. Not only concerned with the goods, we are also concerned with the services. So, but simply speaking, the wholesale price is also measured the same way. If you look at it, okay, there we track the change in price, okay, nominal GDP, real GDP. But here we just simply compute the weighted average of basket of goods at current market price divided by the same weighted average of price of the same goods at a base year price multiplied by 100. And how do you compute the rate of inflation? WPI N minus 1. In this case, N stands for current month, N minus 1 stands for the same month of the previous year, divided by WPI N minus 1. I mean, rate of change gives you rate of inflation. Positive inflation, negative deflation. But that's it. Got it? Who computes inflation based on WPI? Don't say Government of India. CPI, I happen to explicitly convey MOSPI. MOSPI stands for Minister of Statistics and Program Implementation. So who computes inflation based on WPI? And the one who computes based on WPI is also one who computes inflation based on SPI, Service Price Index. Department, isn't it? Office of Economic Advisor. The Department of Industrial Promotion and Trade in the Minister of Commerce and Industry. Got it? So, simply speaking, Commerce Minister. Who is the Commerce Minister of India? Who is the Prime Minister of India? That's not an answer, right? Laughing, crying is not an answer for anything, right? Who is Commerce Minister of India? You think he is not really relevant? Finance Minister कौन है? Okay, so then why do you really think Commerce Minister? How dare you really ignore? Is Commerce Ministry not really an important ministry? I'm not asking you randomly who is the Ministry of Minister of Animal Husbandry. Of course, we don't have, I think, isn't it? Right? If I ask for your state, isn't it? But Commerce Minister. Defense Minister कौन है? Okay, external affairs minister? Huh? Acha, then you only, isn't it? Okay, commerce minister. Why so? Huh? So don't ever say he is not appearing news as frequently as these people. Okay, come on, yeah. Okay, every time you just come across World Trade Organization, every time you just speak with foreign trade agreements, free trade agreements, you do keep coming across the name of this person. Huh? एक clue है, he is an MP from Maharashtra, but still ठीक है चलता छोड़ दो. So next, something similar to wholesale price index measured by the same economic advisor. In the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, we also have a service price index. Got it? But let's not spend much time. But right now, the common practice of measuring inflation there is using CPI. How is it different from WPI? More or less the same logic. It's an index that tracks the change in price of a certain basket of goods and services measured in retail markets. This is what we call a retail inflation. And that using wholesale price we call wholesale inflation. That's it. So how do you do it? So as of now, remember I said must be Minister of Statistics and Program Implementation does measure CPI retail, CPI urban, CPI combined. This is why we need a separate guide because 2012 ka pehle, there is to be three different indices: CPI industrial workers, CPI agricultural labor, CPI urban non-manual employees. This used to be those days measured by MOSPI, these two by labor department. But now 12 say this is the practice. All of them measured by the same ministry. Okay, understood? Yes. So I think notice this board seems to be very smart. Okay, because look at it's simply differentiating the gesture. Okay, इसके साथ है तो white color है, and if I use finger, it's giving obviously a different color. Okay, it's smart than many of us. So coming back, okay, so I hope you understood. Again, the inflation case, rate of change in CPI number. That's it. इसके अलावा there hardly any competition. Every time it's just only a rate of change. That's it. Got it? Yes. Other than this, the government of India has now appointed a committee, a team, to look after the feasibility of measuring inflation based on PPI. मतलब है producer price index. Because generally, come से कम every product has to go through three phases. At the form, production, and then distribution, right? And then retail. So we have an index to track the change in price at this. We have an index to track the change at this level. But once it's out of the factory, isn't it, the change, because the price in the market is sum of factor cost incurred on factors of production plus taxes. Am I right? That's how we measure the market price. And to be more appropriate, it should also subtract subsidies. This is the formula for factor cost, right? Market price cost, market price. Sorry, market price is factor cost plus indirect taxes minus subsidies. Right? So if you look at any of these indices, though either wholesale market, consumer, retail market, we're just tracking the change in market price. Right? So we have indices to measure at a wholesale price, wholesale market, retail market. Now government thinks, why not measure at this level? If there is a change at this level, definitely would have a change at these two levels, right? But a change at this doesn't necessarily mean a change at this level. Am I right? So in fact, the very basic essence is to track the change in cost of production or change in cost of factors of production. If this changes, definitely other has to change. So this is a producer price index, index that tracks the change in cost of production or factory gate prices or excluding taxes. Don't you think if this change would obviously change that? Yes or no? So now that simply gives you, okay, and we could also figure it out. Are we paying more price because of fall in subsidy, or because of increase in tax, or because of increase in logistics, or is it really because of increase in cost of production? That seems to be a better idea, right? Yes or no? And government could also get to figure out, are the prices increasing, is it really because of increase in demand, or increase in taxes, or increase in actual cost of production? So that the government could also make an appropriate decision to address the challenge. Am I right? So we do have now index to track the change in price at this level. All that we don't have it is track the change in price. And इसीलिए ना the government now has come up with asking people, okay, some team, अरे भाई देखो, why don't you look at a feasibility to measure PPI based inflation, producer price index. Am I clear? As of now, we are not officially, but we sooner or later, and this has been a common practice across many developed nations. Understood? Yes. Now, if I ask you, of course, it has nothing to do with inflation, but let me just add an extra information. Index of industrial production. Index of industrial production. अभी तक जो भी index I have discussed is an index, okay, is a price index. But this is an output index. It's an index that tracks the change in industrial output. It's an index that tracks the change in industrial output. When I say industrial sector, what comprises industrial sector in India? What does comprise industrial sector in India? Mining, quarrying, mining and quarrying. You know, quarry, stone quarries, mining and quarrying, manufacturing, construction, gas, water supply, electricity, okay, all such utility services. These four together, mining and quarrying, manufacturing, construction, gas, water supply, electricity, and any other such utility services together is what we call industrial sector. But in general, how do you differentiate these terms, firm and an industry? A firm and industry. FIRM, firm and industry. दोनों में फर्क क्या है? Group of firms is industry. Group of firms produce similar output is an industry. Like steel industry. मतलब not one steel factory. All steel factories. Steel firm, steel industry. Software firm, software industry. Generally, you might have a perception industry, matlab, it should emit large amount of carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, a big factory. No, like you people use a Tollywood. Cinema industry. Doesn't mean there is a factory where you throw the lead actors and then you have the movie output coming. All the production houses in Telugu industry, we call Tollywood, right? Sandalwood. Sandalwood matlab? Okay, yes, isn't it? So movie industry, film industry, software industry refers to group of firms producing similar output. So when it comes to industrial sector, IAP tracks the change in industrial output. Okay? Yes. And before coming back to class tomorrow, do let me know what are generally considered core sectors in industry, and also just have a look at PMI, Purchasing Manager Index. So this के बाद we look at the previous questions and move on to monetary policy. Okay? Yes. That's for the day. We'll meet tomorrow. Sharp 8.